Welcome to the 10th anniversary of Reimagine 2021. Presented by Mousebelt. Coming up next.
Hey guys, my name is Daeki. I'm currently the head of ecosystem for Icon and also an early contributor for OMM Protocol. Happy to be here at Reimagine.
Hello and welcome to Reimagine 2021. This is our one-year anniversary, believe it or not, in our 10th edition of the Reimagine conference. We've been hosting these events as part of our monthly series, bringing you nothing but the best projects, bright minds, and leaders in this space. We've been fortunate enough to invite many talented individuals and teams to come speak with us, providing updates, insights, and all the above that's happening in crypto. I'll be your host today, Adam, from the Mousebelt team. Where we focus on early stage investments through our accelerator. We're providing development support to a number of growing projects, as well as education within our Mousebelt university program. So our main objectives and goals are simple, including Reimagine. It's to increase adoption, use cases, and real world applications. We just basically seek to educate our audience really on blockchain by helping them understand crypto's real impact. So we're very fortunate today to have Daeki come join us from the Icon community, from OMM. He's a friend of ours, a partner of ours, a great leader here based out of San Francisco, but he does go back and forth to Seoul. Daeki, how you doing, man? Appreciate you taking time out of your day to come speak with us.
Good. Thanks for having me here.
Awesome. So I've known Daeki now actually for probably a few years. Here in San Francisco, we've chatted about a lot of things between teams, and they've just taken off, and they've always just excelled, executed, delivered, and I'm just excited to kind of chat with them to catch up. It's been a little bit. How you been surviving through COVID, Daeki?
Well, vaccinated here in the Bay Area, so that's all good. I mean, I think this Delta variant and whatnot is getting somewhat scary, so hopefully there's no second lockdown, but I think so far so good.
Awesome. So how I see today's conversation, it's going to be a little bit of everything. I do want to touch on Icon's growth. You are head of ecosystem, kind of what that entails and what have been your takeaways, right? And then I also want to get into some of the updates that Icon's been releasing, or at least communicating to everybody that's following within the network. And then also OMM, your most recent project that's been in the works for quite some time, but it's kind of coming to the end. So that's how I see this layout. I want to first kick this off, and like Icon's from Korea, from Seoul. You guys operate out of San Francisco. In terms of ecosystem, like what are some of the takeaways that you see for the last 4 years? You've been part of Icon for quite a while. It's been up and down, bear markets and all that, but we'd love to kind of hear from you because you guys have grown and you guys are strong community, strong tech, strong talent. So yeah, what from inception until now, what have you noticed in terms of the growth that you guys have put in?
Yeah, I think some of the key learnings we've had over the past few years is that it's all about the community in the end, especially for, I think, blockchain protocols. Even if you go to like all the way to Bitcoin, I think the reason why Bitcoin has a value is because so many people believe that it has a value, right? So from that, I think initially, with the bear market and whatnot, a lot of people were complaining about prices, and this happened to basically every protocol, right? But then throughout the bear market, I think that's when people actually start building because you're not restricted by prices anymore. So there were these builders within our ecosystem who kept building. And, I think we ourselves also built this entity called ICX Station, which is basically incubating multiple services, and it was trying to lead by examples. And over the past few years of the bear market, I think our community has really grown to adopt that, it's these things take time, right? But then it's important that we build these things so that they actually make it really valuable. And then that, I think, understanding has, I think, been pretty well spread across our community. So I think our community is pretty well aligned in terms that, it's like these things don't happen in like a few days or weeks or months, right? It takes years to build these things, but it's also, you need a collaborative effort within the community to really push this development and actually use these protocols, provide feedback. So I think all of that has really matured over the past few years, and that we see a lot of good, developers building new projects, and we're pretty excited about the overall the momentum that we have right now.
And how do you do that? Like, it is definitely all about community, but and feedback, right? So what did you guys do to kind of build this robust like community? Was it community? Was it what kind of engagement, what kind of participation came from the team? And then like to scale that, right? Like how do you do you bring in ambassadors to kind of support you? Do you host a lot of events? I think these are kind of critical, factors, right? We're talking to a lot of people here that watch, like, why should I build on this blockchain? Why are some blockchains kind of, more, I don't know, not more, but successful than others? And then why have, strong communities or not? And so what were some of the things that you think were critical in terms of building the community? So was that like through a lot of like Telegram chats? Was it just like 24/7 communication to everybody that was following Icon? What did that look like?
I think it's a combination of multiple things. I'll just touch upon a few things. I think one is that we're fortunate enough to have like a good, really strong, engaged community to begin with. I'm really thankful for that. But I think the second part is like folks like Scott and whatnot have been really active in Telegram, always trying to respond to any questions that come up. I think, like a lot of people underestimate the importance of just like, answering some of these questions, but these things do add up. I think people are really impressed by just this quick turnaround and how people care about, these questions the community may have. And I think the next step for us was that, with these balance and OMM and whatnot, like with this project, we wanted to build it as like a full DAO project from the beginning. So we pulled in like community members from the inception, right? Like when you have this idea, like pulled in community members, whether they're a developer, designer, etc., like just bring them in and then start building the project together, and then have them like have like ownership in these like protocols as well, right? And I think that kind of process has led really more groups to feel like, oh, like I feel like I'm like really core part of this, movement / protocol, and also can potentially get some upside from these things as well. And then we're just replicating that, right? So I think like Balance was kind of the initial one. We're kind of continuing that with OMM. They have more projects like Craft that's coming up soon as well. So I think the expansion of that into multiple projects, and then people seeing the examples, as I said earlier, like we're trying to lead by examples, and people see, oh, like if you launch something like Balance on Icon, like that's actually something meaningful, and I want to work on something like that, right? So I think that kind of momentum has like spread across the entire community at this point.
Which I think like it also leads into the DAO, right? Like voting, proposals, governance. Can you talk a little bit about kind of the DAO experience from your eyes, and why it's been what we call like successful, which is participation. And you're touching on it a little bit, right? You're super engaging, but even just from a DAO, concept, right? Which is, some people think it might be difficult to kind of for people to understand, like in the world for the masses, like that we got to vote, we got to participate. It requires this. Right now, we kind of, give up our votes to local officials, state officials, and we kind of, do you kind of see a similar process? Is it like every individual needs to vote? Do you think there's going to be tiers of delegating votes, to those that maybe know a little bit more? And are you worried about like kind of centralization in that aspect?
Yes, I think DAO is like a pretty interesting concept, right? I think all of the team at Icon are like pretty bullish on DAO and like really pushing DAO. And I think Icon itself is a DAO at this point. Right now, the current architecture of the governance of Icon network is a DPoS system. So it is more of a delegated basis system because, the unfortunate truth, and like having kind of like seen how this kind of unfold on Icon, is that even if you give governance power to everyone, like it's not like everyone's going to be participating in these governance decisions, right? If you look at some of these major DeFi protocols, like the governance participation with the governance token is actually pretty low. It's in a single digit, right? So I think for Icon, the way they've done it is like basically it's a delegate system where individuals have to basically stake and also like choose which delegate to vote for to actually earn the reward. So there is economic design built into it. And then from these delegates, we call them peer reps, they have responsibilities to basically maintain the network. They're basically a validator of the network. But also we've basically implemented the system. The latest system is called CPS, which is basically contribution proposal system. So it's basically a DAO fund where it's controlled by these delegates. And they basically have to like, there's many proposals that comes up every month, and then they basically have to conclude on like which ones to support as like a group of delegates. So it's been pretty interesting to see how this whole DAO thing turns out, but that's how we're doing it at Icon right now.
Awesome. Yeah, so there's a lot of activity. You guys are still going strong. It's growing and it's been great. And Icon is a sponsor of the Reimagine conference for the past few events. Your team has always been participating, and we're very appreciative of kind of basically everybody's support. We've had your team on, from Min to you to Scott, to a lot of the community, and everybody's been kind of saying the same thing, right? And every team provides some value. They believe in it, which is good, and it's obviously showing throughout the network and protocol. Can you provide, and we've had some updates probably over a month ago now from Min, right? And we've had Scott on before. I know there's been a couple releases in the last few days. Can you share a little bit on some of the release, maybe Icon 2.0, or I think even ICE was kind of was highlighted just a few days ago. Maybe we'll start with ICE.
Okay, so ICE is kind of the latest effort from the foundation. It's basically a way for us to have EVM compatibility chain that's easier for Icon community developers to basically utilize, that's available on EVM, whether that's a tool, whether that's a code, right? And the idea is that, by having an EVM compatible chain, which is also going to be supporting EUWASM as well. So we wanted to have like a chain that's somewhat can utilize the existing kind of infrastructure that's already built in. And then I think going forward, Icon is focused a lot more on the interoperability side of things with the launch of Icon 2.0 and BTP.
And how does that play into like, I think Icon's mission, right, is it's an aggregate of chains. It's a hyper connect like to the world is one of the slogans, the taglines. Why is that important, you think, to maybe not be the chain, but to be compatible with many chains? Are you a believer? Obviously you're a believer, but why are we a believer in many chains and kind of, collaborating with different technologies to make this kind of ecosystem work?
Yes, I think it goes back to like, what is a blockchain? Like, to me, and I've actually written a Medium article about this, but almost like each blockchain, it feels like a nation state, right? Yeah. And if you think about this whole metaverse idea, like you're already seeing that on blockchain protocols. To me, it's basically each protocol is like a metaverse of its own entity or nation state. And the community members are basically kind of citizens of that nation state, right? So if you believe or believers of that nation state, then you stay and you buy tokens, you stake, and then you earn like these rewards and whatnot. If you're not a believer, then you just leave and go to another nation state. And because we believe that it is more of like not necessarily like one blockchain wins all game, but more of like a multi-chain kind of universe that we see. Like if that's gonna become the future, like we definitely need some things to be able to really connect all these chains. Like if you look at the world today, I'm living in the States right now, but like you definitely need these different connections across other countries to actually bring it to the full potential, right? And I see the same thing happening in the blockchain ecosystem, and that's why we feel that like this connecting all these different chains is an important mission, and that's what Icon's focusing on.
And not to get into the technical, the nitty gritty of it, but like, what are some of the challenges to, I wouldn't consider Icon 2.0 or anything like an upgrade, right? Isn't it more of a redesign or architecture kind of I forget the terminology, but it's really not an upgrade, but it's just kind of a new design that they're going to implement, right?
It's a complete redesign from the architecture perspective, yes.
And so, I think a lot of people think, why don't these things just work? Why is it a little bit slow? Why is this not available? I think we're just in our lives today. Everything moves quick, but we underestimate, or we don't know, as far as normal people, like the amount of years and decades like these technologies have snowballed to get us to where we are. So what have been some of the challenges to redesigning this architecture? Obviously, it's critical. It's important. You guys said, over a year ago, like, we need to do this to kind of maintain, or at least be able to, build bridges, and connect with others. So what have been some of the challenges? I'm trying to highlight this because I'm sure a lot of people are like, well, why isn't it ready? Or in general, why is blockchain so cumbersome? But it's because we got to literally like build this stuff from scratch. The tools, the tooling, the languages. So from not to get into the technical details, but like, how has it been redesigning this from your team? Like, pretty smooth? Obviously, it's time consuming. How do you guys see kind of the efforts being delivered?
I think it is a quite time consuming process in general in the first place. I think you can kind of see that just from like even E 2.0, right? I think they just announced yesterday that they may just push back the E 2.0 to like end of 2022. So I think these things always take a lot more time to build, first of all. I think also the second part, I think a lot of people don't also necessarily know, is that like migration from like V1 to V2, and this is probably same for ETH as well, is also takes quite a bit of time. Like, you need to make sure that this like the new architecture, everything is syncing well with the previous version of blockchain, right? So like confirming that, like, I think a lot of our time now is like not so much spent on designing the V2. That's all done and built and tested actually. It's actually a lot of it is about like migrating V1 data to V2.
Yeah.
Make sure all that data is stored in V2 and everything is compatible, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
No, I think, a lot of the nuances, right? It's not so much a technical barrier, but just more of a security barrier, a privacy barrier, compatibility, barrier, which is great. So no, that's good stuff. So like, let's kind of get into OMM. What's been the inspiration behind OM, and what does OM stand for?
OM stands for simple open money market. I like DeFi, but I think we prefer like the term open finance a bit more. I mean, the idea is that we really want to make finance open for everyone, right? Yeah. And like how we started OM is because, I mean, the way I feel, I love DeFi, but like currently I feel like DeFi is like somewhat of a circle jerking situation where we're basically like feeding each off of yields basically, and then like the ones who know earlier get into the farms and whatnot, just like get these governance.
So you don't think it's sustainable, like that type of organic growth? That was kind of like searching for yields and like reaching and the hot new shiny like object.
Yeah, right? It is a good user acquisition strategy
for
right?
sure.
It's not something you do forever, right? And
totally.
I mean, I think yes, it's an interesting user acquisition strategy, but then like it's only limited to DeFi crowd right now, which is like less than probably 1 million people, right?
Yeah.
But to me, it's like a very small number of people versus like what it can potentially become. So I've been thinking about that a little bit and been pretty active DeFi user myself. And then because there were a lot of interesting things happening in yields on DeFi, I've actually asked some of my friends, like if you just have a lot of dollars, just deposit some of these dollars on Compound or Aave, and you can earn these interest, right? But then typically what happens, I've recommended this to multiple friends, like about a week afterward, they always come back to me and say like, oh, I can't figure this out, right? Like I try to walk them through and then try to understand like where it's blocking them. And I would say still to this date, I think the user flow and experience to interact with a blockchain service is broken, right? It is okay for like blockchain natives like us because we just accept that it's okay, But for someone who's new to the space and doesn't really care if it's like blockchain or whatnot, but just trying to use this service, there's a lot of blockers for them. So after realizing that, we thought, oh, maybe this is an opportunity, right? Like we want to build a DeFi open finance service that anyone can access, but right now anyone can't access it because there's a lot of blockers. So how do you build something that doesn't have a lot of these blockers so that anyone can use these like DeFi protocols, right? So that's kind of the genesis of how we when I started working on OMM, basically build a lending protocol where like anyone without much knowledge can use.
And to even get a little bit deeper, like what is open finance, right? To you, is that like the unbanked? Is it for developed countries or people in these regions, right, that are used to the legacy systems? Do you think the community? Do you think the world is ready for DeFi? Obviously, we're building it out, but how do you see open finance like impacting? I guess who do you think is gonna? To what degree do you think open finance will impact the people, our parents, our families? Do you think we're gonna have options? Do you think it's really gonna be a viable solution for many? How do you see that kind of taking place?
I think it's a step-by-step process. I don't think like we're gonna like immediately like, bank them banked like right away from day one. I think the first step is like, having some of these folks who don't necessarily have access to specific financial products to be able to have access to them, right?
Yeah.
Like, for example, some of these folks may have a bank account but might not have access to some of these financial products, right? So now they can actually, if like for example, even like to actually to a certain extent, even in the US, if I'm like depositing my dollars into the bank, I'm earning less than 0.01% interest rate, right?
Totally.
Versus, there were a lot of these high yield like so-called like checking accounts or bank accounts that popped up over the past few years from fintech companies, but that has come down quite a bit because of the Fed interest rate going down. So, I mean, even to them, I've talked to a few people like who just have like a lot of cash because they don't want to invest in anything just yet because the market is volatile. Like to them, like this is like an opportunity, like access that they don't have right now, right? Like it's like some financial institutions have access to higher yield products, but normal retail doesn't, right? So in that sense, actually, we're providing even opportunities for these folks who don't have access to high yield products. And then if we can go a step further, I mean, the idea is like, some of these products you have to be like US, resident or citizen to basically have access to. So for regions outside of like specific regions that have access to these financial products, I think we can also offer specific financial products on blockchain that is normally not accessible by them, right? And then maybe afterwards we can kind of get to this stage of like banking them bank, but which I think is kind of a further away, which may happen eventually. But I think we're just trying to go after low hanging fruits, which is accessing, giving them access to products that they don't have access right now, right? It's in the real world.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we underestimate those that don't have access to finance, even in the States, right? Or even in developed countries. We think everybody has a bank account, which is not true. We think everybody understands kind of how the banking services work, which is not true. So yeah, I think this open finance allows, and I think one of the advantages is like everybody's on their phone, right? So that's one way to get access. Do you see like we've talked about like DeFi and traditional legacy systems? What about this in between of like fintech and open finance? You think there's a merge there? We went from to the banks controlling most of it to like your Venmos, your PayPals, right? And now we're kind of coming into this blockchain crypto world. Do you see any like convergence amongst these three? The banks obviously thought maybe nobody's going to take them down, and now fintechs come around to streamline that, and the banks didn't go digital, they didn't innovate, and now they're trying to. We have like some of these some of these solutions at the traditional banks, but do you see a lot of, or do you see any convergence through, I guess, like fintech to crypto and being able to operate as a hybrid kind of solution?
No, I think that's where the future is going right now. I think I talked about like having like a current user experience is broken. And I think a lot of DeFi protocols are probably talking to fintech apps where they have a lot of user base and deposits so that they can actually, utilize these DeFi protocols. I don't know what the regulatory, I guess stance on that is, or like when that will happen. I do think it will eventually happen. I just don't know like how quickly it will happen, and that's why we're trying to do both at the same time with OMM and this product called Bridge, which is basically that user interface for regular people. But I think that's the direction. Like we're definitely going to see some convergence between, DeFi protocols and more of like a centralized front-end service, where it's a lot more user friendly, but at the same time there are some, counterpart risk and whatnot, but they actually deposit into DeFi protocols.
What have you guys done? Maybe an example or two to make the onboarding experience, I guess, relatively seamless, or to attract more users, adoption. What has OMM done to kind of tackle some of these issues?
Yeah, so to be specific, I think it's more about this wallet. I think the ICX Station team has built, but so this wallet called Bridge is going to be the onboarding tool for regular users. So the idea is like we kind of went to our customers, right, and like asked like, what is your why are you blocked from using these like DeFi services, right? I think first thing was just this thing called private key management, right? I think for us it makes sense that your key, if it's not your key, it's not your money, right? Like you have to manage your private key, but for regular people it's somewhat cumbersome. Like they have to like memorize these like or save somewhere these keys, right? So I think the private key management side was one thing. The other part was, even like basically they always have to like open up like Coinbase account or something. Like the fact they help to open up an exchange account specifically to like get access to crypto, first of all, was another bottleneck. And then on top of that, once they get the exchange account, they have to transfer those coins to their own wallet as well, right? So that was, like also like hassle for them. And not only that, but they also have to buy some ETH and send ETH as well for gas fee, right? So that's also a bottleneck, right? And even after that, basically like for example, if you go to Compound Ave, like you can't do everything there. Like basically from a product user experience perspective, you want to grab customers when they're on your website.
Yeah.
Like that's the ideal time to grab your customers. But then the fact that now, you're on a Compound, now you're trying to use it, but then now I have to go back to, Coinbase account, open it up, and you have to move your like coins to your own wallet. And then you also have to buy ETH and move to your own wallet. And you also have to scribble down your private key, save it somewhere, and then also have to go to Compound website again to basically utilize it. For example, like it's a very cumbersome user experience, right? So all of that is basically abstracted away. So Bridge is like basically built into the website, so you don't have to leave, go anywhere. And then basically we're using this fee sharing system in ICX so that you actually don't have to have ICX to actually make any transactions. So there's no need to like buy ICX separately to interact with DeFi service using Bridge, for example. And then, like basically we're going to be able to have people able to directly deposit dollars and convert that into stablecoin on the wallet.
So the flow is link up your bank account, your debit card, your credit card.
Make your email address, which is we're using Magic SDK. So the flow is basically you go to OMM, open up Bridge widget on the website. You don't have to go anywhere else. And then you just sign up using email, which a lot of people are familiar with. So you don't have to manage private key because Magic is doing that with the email authentication. And then once you open up your wallet, like voila, like your wallet is created, great. And now is the fiat on-ramp part. So you just basically deposit by linking your bank account and then send your money that gets converted into stablecoin. And basically that wallet has like a gas link, so you don't have to have your own gas. So now once you have a stablecoin converted from dollars, you can go into OMM and like basically deposit dollars right away. And then you start earning interest on that and then also earn OMM rewards.
Nice. No, I think that's kind of a straightforward, and it's what we need. That we have an audience here, right? That's trying to understand the landscape and the pace of innovation that happens so quick in this space. But how do you from your personal experience, like how do you identify like good DeFi projects, open finance projects from like the shitty knockoffs or like forks or like, we're talking about managing kind of your keys. We're talking about, onboarding into dApps. At the same time, like, what kind of work did you put in maybe to identify good projects? Was it the team, right? Was it kind of the updates, the white paper, from like these, from these other like projects that just got spun up or forked or whatever the case is, right? How do you identify like good quality projects? And you guys have some of them on your own application layer that maybe you could touch on. But aside from that, yeah, like what's your process of navigating the noise and seeing like, oh, this is a good project. This makes sense. Are there 10 of them? Are there 2 of them? The team.
I think to me, it's always about the community, as going back to what I was saying earlier. And so I think this even applies to like when assessing if it's a good project or not. I think if the project has like really good community, I think that typically works out well.
Yeah.
And because like it's in the end, it's like all these blockchain, it is about your community basically, right? I think token economics important, your team is important, like what you're doing with your product is important. And this is going back to like you're back to investor role, and I used to be at a VC fund, and like typically the things you look for is like market, product, and team, right? And yes, these are all important, but I think more than anything in the blockchain space, community is like really important. Like, and like one particular community I've been super impressed with is this project called Olympus DAO, which is basically algorithmic stablecoin, but they have like a amazing memes / community, which I've been really impressed with.
Nice. What do you think's missing to get more users, more people into crypto? Is it education? Is it just time? And are we in a good spot to meet our the demands?
I think it's just the timing. I think we're a bit early in our days right now. I think infrastructure is not ready right now. And just frankly, user experience sucks for regular users. Like, I mean, they're like utilizing things like Venmo or Uber or some of these like latest fintech products. And if you come to DeFi, it just feels like it's going back 10 years, right? Like it's so cumbersome. You have to like wait several seconds to a minute. Like you have to basically have fees for whatever this thing is. And it's very cumbersome, right? From a regular user perspective. So you have to provide, like basically to me right now, the cumbersome from regular users who doesn't necessarily like appreciate the decentralization aspect, the cumbersomeness is like 10x. So basically the benefit has to be like almost like 20 to 100x to really make it for it. And it's not there, to be honest, right? So I think once we have enough infrastructure to be able to support really good user experience, the cumbersomeness comes down to 1x, then I think DeFi and whatnot is already providing 10x benefits. So I think that should be enough. But it is like, I think coming down to like having enough infrastructure around so that people don't have to go through cumbersomeness to actually experience these things. And even like just interact with the service, like the fact that you have to like, like buy some ETH to actually interact with the service, like that just doesn't register well with someone, right? Like the fact that, I just want to try this service, like people, like product companies are paying you to, basically try these services with all these referrals and like credits. And now if you come to DeFi and they're saying, oh, you actually have to pay something first to even like start using it, like that just doesn't register well with a lot of users.
And talking about cumbersome, talking about infrastructure, even going back to kind of the upgrades on Icon, how do we get more developers, right? Obviously, we need more developers, more talent to focus on some of these things. We need Web 2.0 devs to convert over to start helping these things. Like, and I'm sure you guys talk about this, the developer community. Like, how do we get more people to come into the space? And you can maybe take it from your own like view or maybe an Icon view in terms of providing resources or an environment for them to not focus on so much of maybe the nuts and bolts, but being able to innovate and being able to build. Well, actually, you do have to focus on the nuts and bolts to innovate. So how do you guys or how do you see getting, how do you think we get more developers into the space to help with all this stuff?
I think price helps, just being very frank. I think we've seen these Bitcoin cycles, and I think we always see when the Bitcoin price rallies up, there's a lot more interest from everyone in general, right?
Yeah.
And there's always a portion of these people who are developers, right? So I think these price movements definitely help. I think the second part is just like talking more about like what these blockchains can only do, right? I do talk about like what I'm doing with OMM to my developer friends, and they are genuinely interested about like what it can do, right? I think it is a 10x technology from a technology perspective, it's definitely interesting. So I think it's just like we just have to pull them enough and show them enough things are happening in the blockchain space where they feel like, oh, it's cool, like I want to work on something, right? So I think it's just a combination of like education about what's happening, what it can do, like showing them like a vision of like blockchain space in general. And then actually, like, I guess some of these price movements definitely helps. And then more resources in general, right? For these like external developers to read into like, how can you get into blockchain? Like how can you like start building smart contracts? Because it is a bit of different programming kind of I guess process. So.
For sure. Have you guys? Do you guys have any? Maybe for developers, like, have you made it easier in terms of the languages you guys chose? To make it more developer friendly.
So I think for Icon 1.0, I think we're using Python, and I think for Icon 2.0, actually using Java. So actually been getting some interesting feedback from developers, like, oh, like I'm actually a Java developer, and this is actually great. Now I don't have to learn your language to actually start coding on Icon. So interestingly, I've been receiving some pretty good feedback about how using a language that's familiar to a lot of developers, and hopefully that also lowers the barrier for developers. Because like if you think about, even though it may not be too much work, like the fact that I have to learn a new language to start coding, it's like definitely a barrier to certain degrees.
Yeah.
So I think it will definitely help a little bit as well.
And going back to open finance, like, do you think we should be worried about the TPS, the transactions, right? The volume, the scaling, the transactions, or to compete with the centralized world? Should we exclude that? Like, we're not going to compete because it's going to be a little bit different. It's going to be a little bit slower, but it's more peer to peer, right? Like the values, it's a different option, right? Yeah. So like, you're going to have to give up a little bit to go faster, a little, more centralized, blah, blah, blah. How do you view kind of the transactions? Because, I was kind of like thinking about it. And at first it was like, can we compete with Visa and the MasterCards, right? Those are some of the benchmarks. But in the end, it's like, this is a different way of operating amongst, individuals, entities, peer-to-peer stuff. How do you view like the transactions? Like, it's too slow. Should we not put that much emphasis on it? Because, we do own our own keys. We do, we are, self custodying, our assets and stuff.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a trade-off, I think, in terms of the transaction speed. I think definitely faster transactions helps more adoption.
Yeah.
Just because I think, vast amount of people just don't like waiting around, and their experience with the regular fintech apps is just like, it just happens in a second, right?
Yep.
So it does help, but there is a trade-off. So I think there is likely going to be a use case for a different set of transaction speed, right? For like lower transaction speed with more secure layer, most likely a larger budget that can take more time, can be settled on there. For like smaller budget, more like consumer-based products can potentially utilize some of the faster transaction speed chains and whatnot, because there's less, it's not that it doesn't matter, but it's less a big of an issue if something happens to not go right.
Yeah. No, that's good. I've been thinking about that. Another thing, going back to OMM, actually, do you guys have is there tokenomics involved? Like, is there a governance kind of mechanism? How does is there a token, right? Maybe you could touch on some of that stuff.
Yeah, so that's something I've been thinking a lot about lately. So there will be OMM tokens, which you'll be able to basically earn by providing and borrowing on the money market. So it is incentivized. And I do think of this token liquidity mining as a user acquisition. So it's going to be interesting to see how that works out. But I do think it makes sense to eventually make this reward system to be dynamic. Yeah. Probably not starting off initially, but at some point, I mean, it's like if you think about Uber, like they're giving out credits like early on, but you don't give out credits for every single ride that you're doing, right? At that point, I'm always going to just take advantage of these free credits. So it does make sense to be a little bit more adjustable. But it will start off with a fixed liquidity mining. Basically, like the thesis behind OMM is initially it's going to be a money market for ICX holders where they can now finally utilize their ICX to borrow money. It's like similar to like what Coinbase is doing with their Bitcoin. Like if you deposit Bitcoin collateralized, you can actually borrow USDC. So it's basically similar in a DeFi landscape for ICX community. And now you can actually withdraw that USD to your bank account directly through Bridge Wallet. And the second part is we're going to try to go cross-chain with this icon interoperability. So going to bring in more other layer assets to make a cross-chain money market. And the eventual goal is to have people like regular people utilize OMM to deposit dollars to earn interest. So just going back to token side of things, it's going to be liquidity mining, but then we're also going to have a pretty big portion of the DAO fund because I mean it's going to be a DAO from the day one. So I want to make sure we have like a DAO has enough budget to be able to utilize it to the extent they need it to be. And I'm trying to design the governance system where people can proactively participate in the governance and potentially be rewarded as well.
How do you go from a more centralized to a DAO? How does that transition work? Like, it's kind of, you wouldn't give a car keys to a baby, right? To kind of like start driving. So how do you finesse that? Like, the DAO's the end result. The DAO's the end result. But like, I'm controlling this thing for now. It's going to take a little bit of time, but and you guys have other experience elsewhere, just with Icon in general and a couple other projects that we're involved with. How do you kind of like, navigate that?
It's tough, right? But then I think we kind of started out as a DAO mentality in the first place. Like it's already it's not just us, it's like several teams working on this project together right now. So it's already like less centralized than one team working on it, right? Yep. And then I've taken a step further so that we actually start building up a community before we even launch. And then we have like some specific ambassadors who are very active in expressing their governance opinions. So we're already kind of feel like kind of in that transition already, I would say. And then I think once we launch, I think it will be in the hands of the community, but hopefully we'll be also able to communicate our opinions as well. And then hopefully, we can kind of have like more of an equal standing discussions on these governance directions. So I think the transition process is already happening right now. And then the fact that it was built as more of like a collaboration across different teams from the beginning also helps as well.
Which kind of leads me into my next question. You brought on some first of all, you have a good team. I think Ibra's right and like Parrot 9 are helping you right, which are early contributors and a good team. And you can catch some of our interviews with them from V9. But you brought on some advisors like Synthetics, Band, and not only advisors, but you're working with them, integrating Band. Can you tell me like how that's been going and what kind of value they've been able to drive to OMM and yourself and the DAOs and everything?
Yes, I think so we brought on some strategic partners. So there were some funds and individuals. Individuals were from Band and Synthetics. And then we have some funds like Hast, CMS, and FBG that were part of it. So I think mostly from strategic partners, what we're trying to get is, I think from fund side, they just have like a vast network, right? So I think, first of all, having them kind of be strategic partners help you from branding perspective, but also they have a vast network which you can tap into if you need to do some of the sort of the BD opportunities. And then also I think they have some spare capital, so they can probably help with the liquidity mining part as well. From Band and Synthetics specifically, I think Synthetics folks, individuals, I think Synthetics DAO is actually one of the probably most advanced DAOs in the DeFi space right now. And those guys actually pretty involved with a synthetics DAO. So we're definitely trying to learn the best practice on how to like basically operate and sync a DAO from them. And then I think obviously Ben is like experts in the Oracle sector. So trying to definitely learn like the pitfalls of what Oracles, may cause and what best practice there are.
And then there's quite a few Oracles. What made you choose Band?
I think we've just had a really good experience working with bands so far, and then I think a lot of other folks like Bounce and like Ethics and many other DApps have done pretty well and haven't really complained anything about working with bands. So that's why we decided to go with band as well.
Nice. So we're going to kind of wrap it up here. We've been going for a little bit. Where can people learn more, I guess, about Icon, and not only Icon but OMM?
Probably the best place is a website. There's Icon Republic, which is basically kind of the covering everything that's happening on Icon. So Icon Republic is the website to go. I think for OMM, just come to our website, come to our Discord. There's a newsletter. I think Discord is probably the best place to stay tuned with our community. And then if you just want to check out like the latest prototype and tested products, you can just come to the OMM Finance website.
Nice. And we do have students watching. So like, do you have any advice or books or if they're wanting to learn more, or if they want to get over the hump or trying to switch, from whatever careers or wanting to get into blockchain, what are your, and it doesn't even have to be technical, right? It can be business development, it can be marketing. That's one of the good things about blockchain actually, is that you don't really have to be technical to understand it or to work in this space. There's so many roles available, developer growth, community growth, head of ecosystem, right? Marketing teams, business development, partnerships. What would you say, I guess, if you were still in college right now and you were watching this interview, what kind of advice or tips would you give to kind of the future workforce?
I think my advice would be just follow your passion. I think to me, I decided to jump into this space because I felt blockchain was really interesting, not just from a technology perspective, but also from like almost like a society like perspective on how you think about like money and government. All these things are just like very touching to core parts of like some of your beliefs, right? So it was a lot of these like not just technology part, but also like what is touching, and that's really what has driven me to come into the space. And because I was drawn into the space because of those aspects, like I was able to kind of go through the whole bear market, and I mean it didn't feel great obviously, but I was able to go through it really. So I think just try to understand like what you're really looking for, and try to understand like the ideology behind these blockchains and protocols and decentralization, and see if it's for you, right? If it's for you, I think there's like abundant resources out there just on the internet. I think A16Z has a great resource on a lot of these reading lists as well. I think Twitter, I just got into the Twitter game a bit late, but I think on Twitter there's actually a lot of interesting comments on many things that are happening almost real time. And it's like a very fast space, very fast-paced space. So if you like being fast-paced, I think you will thrive in this space.
Awesome. Yeah, things do move quick.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think we'll go ahead and wrap it up here, Daeki.
Right.
Everybody, this is Daeki Lee, head of ecosystem for Icon, early contributor to the OMM project. Please check them out. Very fortunate to have Icon and Daeki's team here sponsor the Reimagine conferences moving forward in partnership with Mouseball as a P-Rep. So we're all just trying to do our part as much as we can. And just kind of like the beginning as we kick this off, it's all about community. It's all about engagement. It's all about participation. There's a little bit for everybody in this space. So hopefully you're enjoying the conference. Daeki, we hope to have you back. And have a good weekend. And hopefully I'll see you soon.
Sounds good. Yep. Sounds good. Thanks.
All right. Bye now.